We look straight down the ladder, make sure that it's not bent or deformed. And then we're going to go along the ladder, we're going to inspect each and every weld on the uprights, the handrails, and the K-braces, just like on the steel ladder.
Yeah.
Okay, here you have the lift cylinder for the ladder. Once again, it has a pivot pin here and a bolt that holds that pivot pin in place. So we want to look at that and make sure it's in place. Also at the other end, you can see there's a pivot pin here. And on the inside of the ladder, there's a retention bolt that holds the pin in place. Okay?
Go.
Okay. As we walk along the ladder, like I said, we're inspecting all the welds where it's welded to the base rail, the handrail structure, and we're looking at the cable condition as we walk out on the ladder. As you can see, this cylinder right here is the extension cylinder, and it extends the ladder. This is a 4-section ladder. This extension cylinder, by way of the cables, extends the ladder out and also retracts the ladder. Okay, so we walk on out here. See this attaching hardware, you need to make sure all the bolts are in place. Okay, the clamp that holds the waterway, right here. Looking, scanning side to side, looking at all the welds. These are the terminal ends for the extension cables. You want to make sure that these bolts, these nuts are tight on either side, and that there's no signs of deformity or any fraying of the cable. You can see in the next section the cable is significantly smaller because the section is smaller. As we go out, you can see the other cables over there as they get smaller into the fly section. Okay, this is a shiv wheel retention bolt right here that holds the shiv wheel in place. You want to make sure that these bolts are in place. These guide blocks should have all these stainless fasteners in place. And if you look on the outside here, you'll see the electrical cords that go out with the ladder. We'll look at those, make sure that they're intact and not frayed or damaged, and that their attaching hardware is in place. All right? Okay. Okay, this is another set of guide blocks. Okay. Okay, here's the next section. So this is section number 3. You can see that this is actually hollow. There's a hollow space inside that, but it's sealed up by way of this weld. So we're looking at the outside for any significant signs of corrosion. And now here's another set of shiv wheels and attaching hardware we want to look at. Look at the condition of the cable as it goes out. And we continue with that type of an inspection all the way out to the end of the ladder. Okay, that's it. Okay, now we're underneath the ladder. We're going to continue our inspection. You notice there's a lift cylinder right there. You want to make sure there's no hydraulic leaking right there. There's the attaching hardware to that pivot pin that holds the lift cylinder. And if you'll pan up inside there, step back, John, you'll see the hydraulic lines that go to each lift cylinder, as well as the check block that's welded onto the side of the lift cylinder. And that's in case you lose a hydraulic line. That'll lock the fluid inside the cylinder and won't allow the ladder to collapse. Okay. If you notice here, the size of the shiv wheels for these large cables, and then this is the extension cylinder that I talked about a minute ago. Make sure the bolts are in place on both sides that holds the lift cylinder, as well as in the back where it's attached. You want to make sure that those are attached back there as well. So you walk out along the bottom of the ladder. Okay, that guide block that guides the next section, you can see it's bolted in here with these large stainless bolts. We'll make sure they're all in place. On the underside, we're looking for any damage to the waterway, like I mentioned on the steel ladder. So we're looking for the same kinds of things, even just on the steel ladder. But this is aluminum, so you don't have any paint on it. It's easier to inspect. Make sure these lock nuts are in place. And the waterway seal, which just recently was greased after our drill. I'm examining the welds on the bottom as I work my way along, and if you notice right here, this is a heat sensor label for the aerial ladder. If that turns black, then that means it's been exposed to 300 300 degrees. Each section has a pair in the middle and a pair at the end. We walk out, more attaching hardware for the guide blocks. You can see another set of guide blocks here and attaching hardware. And you can see this brace right here that holds the waterway in place. We want to look at all the welds here, make sure nothing is cracked or come loose. This bracket holds the waterway intact to this section of the ladder. Walk along here, looking at all the K-brace welds underneath. And here's another set of guide blocks. All the hardware's in place. And if you notice right here, they actually have a torque stripe, just like on the lug nuts. This is painted orange. That's an indication that that's been torqued to the appropriate force to hold that guide block in place. Right. Another waterway bracket. Now we're going to get out here to the end and we're going to have a look at the tip of the ladder. Okay, this is a replaceable tip. In case it gets damaged, it unbolts right here and it's easily replaced. Nozzle attaching hardware again. Wiring, make sure that that's tie wrapped in place. And that none of these cables are damaged or frayed that go into this control box. Now we're going to work our way down the other side of the ladder and continue our inspection.
Go for it.
Okay, as a continuation of your aerial inspection, you need to have a look at the outriggers when they're deployed. Make sure that they're not cracked or damaged. And you want to look at the attaching hardware. And we're going to look at the ladder cradle when we get up to the front where it bolts to the frame of the truck. So if you'll pan in over here, this is a proximity indicator. We'll make sure that this cable's in place. And if you take a look in here, you'll see these welds. This is the torque box that's bolted to the frame rail, which supports the ladder. Okay, so we want to look at the rail itself, look at the lines. We're looking for any kind of hydraulic leaks. Look down at the bottom for the attaching hardware for the guides. Attaching hardware for the stainless shields on the outside. Make sure they're in place. And then we'll move on to the right front outrigger. Another proximity switch that indicates when the beam is retracted right here. You want to look at the attaching hardware. And here's some hydraulic lines, okay, that supply, let's see, you supply the extension rod, which is inside the beam. Okay, down below you can see the bolts, these large bolts right here. They hold the torque box to the frame of the truck. So you want to look at those, make sure they're all in place. Inspect the outrigger itself again for the same things. Okay, on this particular truck, the ladder cradle is bolted to the frame rails right here. You can see the bolts. They have nuts on them. You want to make sure that the bolts are in place. There's no cracks in the welds. And then follow it up through the engine compartment. And then you can see it up there as it protrudes above the compartment and cradles the ladder. So you want to inspect that entire assembly. Make sure that the guide blocks are in place on the ladder itself. Make sure that there's no damage to that support structure, the ladder cradle.